Let me ask you a question. When someone ignores you, what's your first instinct? Most people want to fight back, prove themselves, or demand attention. But here's the truth. The most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. It's about control, dignity, and shifting the balance of power. Today, I want to show you why silence speaks louder than any words when you're being ignored. When you are ignored, the first thing that usually happens is your sense of self feels attacked. You want to speak up, defend yourself, or demand that the other person acknowledge you. But here's the truth: the more you chase attention, the more you give away your power. Silence, on the other hand, is the act of reclaiming that power. It tells the other person, without words, that you are not desperate for their recognition, that you are not moved by their attempts to dismiss you, and that you control how you respond. When you remain silent, you communicate strength and confidence far more effectively than any argument could. Think about how people who are truly powerful behave. Do they run around trying to get noticed? Do they argue endlessly just to be seen? No. They operate with a quiet assurance. They know who they are, and they don't need validation from every single person in the room. That is the mindset you tap into when you use silence as your response. Instead of giving someone else the authority to define your worth, you stand firm in your own presence. And ironically, that silence often forces the other person to pay more attention to you because you didn't give them the reaction they were expecting. Reclaiming your power through silence also means you are taking control of the emotional battlefield. When someone ignores you, they are often testing you, trying to see how you will react. If you lash out, if you beg, or if you crumble, you've just handed them the control. But if you choose silence, you remove their leverage. You're showing that you cannot be easily manipulated, and that sends a very clear message. You are not someone to be played with. There's also a psychological edge to silence. Humans are uncomfortable with a lack of response. We're wired to seek closure, to want a reaction. So when you stay silent, you create an imbalance. The other person may start to question themselves. Did they go too far? Did they miscalculate? Your silence forces them to sit with their own behavior, and sometimes that reflection is more powerful than anything you could have said. By not responding, you are not avoiding the situation. You are allowing your presence to speak for itself. Another aspect of reclaiming power through silence is the way it protects your energy. Not every situation deserves your words, your explanations, or your effort. When you constantly engage, you drain yourself. But silence allows you to preserve your energy for things that truly matter. It's a form of discipline, a decision not to waste your voice on people who haven't earned the right to hear it. That discipline is what sets strong individuals apart from those who are easily provoked. Finally, silence gives you time to evaluate. Instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, you create space to think clearly. That space helps you decide whether the situation even deserves your attention, and if it does, how to respond strategically. In that pause, in that quiet, you regain clarity and perspective, and with clarity comes strength. This is what reclaiming your power through silence truly looks like. It's not just the absence of words, it's the presence of control, dignity, and self-respect. When you think about attention, it is easy to assume that it is something you are entitled to, that people owe you acknowledgement simply because you exist or because you are present in their lives. But the reality is that attention is a currency, and like any form of currency, it is not freely given. It is earned through presence, through consistency, and through the way you carry yourself. When someone ignores you, the most dangerous trap you can fall into is believing that you have to prove your worth to them, that their attention is something you must chase. The moment you adopt that mindset, you've already placed yourself in a position of weakness. True strength comes when you recognize that attention is not a right. It's something people choose to give, and whether they give it or not says more about them than it does about you. Earning attention doesn't mean performing, begging, or shouting louder than everyone else. It means cultivating a presence that speaks for itself. Think about the people who draw you in without effort. They don't demand to be noticed. They walk into a room and their energy commands space without uttering a single word. That kind of presence is built on self-assurance, confidence, and the discipline to know that your value does not depend on who validates it. When you internalize that, you stop chasing attention and start embodying it. You stop asking for a seat at the table and instead you create your own. When you operate from the belief that attention must be earned, you also change the way you interact with others. You no longer feel compelled to engage with every slight, every dismissal, or every moment of being overlooked. Instead, you invest your energy into the areas and people that reciprocate respect. And when others see that you are selective with your time and focus, your value automatically rises in their eyes. People want what they cannot easily have. When your attention is not easily accessible, it becomes more meaningful when you choose to give it. This shift also helps you see through the games people play. Sometimes being ignored is intentional. It's a tactic used to make you doubt yourself, to make you compete for validation. But when you understand that attention is earned, you refuse to play. You don't enter their game because you know your value is not tied to their acknowledgement, and that refusal to compete immediately repositions the power dynamic. Instead of you trying to win their approval, they are left wondering why they couldn't shake your composure. That mystery is often more powerful than any words you could have spoken. Attention being earned also applies inward. Ask yourself, are you giving yourself the same level of attention you crave from others? If you spend more energy trying to be seen by others than you do cultivating your own growth, you are misplacing your focus. The more you build yourself, your skills, your character, your presence, the less you depend on external recognition. You begin to understand that the attention you command outwardly is simply a reflection of the work you have done inwardly. So when someone ignores you, remember this truth: attention is not an obligation they owe you. It is a mirror of their priorities, their perceptions, and sometimes even their insecurities, but it is never a mirror of your worth. Your job is not to demand it, but to live in such a way that when people do give you their attention, it is because you have earned it through the strength of your presence, the clarity of your character, and the discipline to never chase what does not serve you. Emotional control is often the dividing line between those who are easily manipulated and those who command respect. When someone ignores you, the natural reaction is to feel a rush of emotions: anger, frustration, insecurity, or even shame. Those emotions are powerful, and if you let them drive your behavior, you instantly hand control to the other person. They see you lose your composure, they see you scramble for their recognition, and in that moment, they know they've succeeded in pulling your strings. Emotional control is about refusing to give anyone that kind of power over you. It is the discipline to remain steady no matter what tactic is used against you, and it is that steadiness that communicates true strength. Think about the times when you've seen someone lose their temper in public. Their words might have been justified, but the way they delivered them stripped away their credibility. Now compare that to someone who stays calm in the face of provocation. Their silence, their composure, their refusal to be rattled. It draws attention because it is rare. That is what emotional control gives you, the ability to stand tall when others expect you to break. And when people realize they cannot provoke you, they stop trying. They know their attempts are wasted, and in that realization, they lose power. Emotional control is also about choosing your response rather than being ruled by impulse. When ignored, you may feel an immediate urge to lash out, to send a text demanding answers, to argue, or to prove yourself. But if you take a step back and breathe, you create space to decide whether responding even benefits you. Often, silence or disengagement speaks volumes, but you can only make that choice if you are in control of your emotions. Without that control, your actions become reactions, and reactions are predictable. Predictability makes you easy to manipulate. Emotional discipline, on the other hand, makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability commands respect. Another layer of emotional control is understanding that not every situation deserves your full emotional investment. You cannot stop people from ignoring you, dismissing you, or underestimating you. What you can control is how much of your energy you allow them to consume. Emotional control is the shield that protects your inner world from being constantly disrupted by external forces. It allows you to redirect that energy toward building yourself, pursuing your goals, and staying aligned with your values rather than being caught in the cycle of reaction. It's also important to recognize that emotional control does not mean suppressing how you feel. It means acknowledging your emotions without letting them dictate your choices. Anger, hurt, and disappointment are natural responses, but they do not have to translate into visible behavior that others can exploit. Emotional control is the skill of feeling deeply while acting with intention. That distinction is what separates those who crumble when ignored from those who rise above it with dignity intact. Ultimately, emotional control becomes a form of silent authority. People notice it even when you don't announce it. They see it in your body language, in your measured tone, in the way you carry yourself when challenged. When others realize you are not easily provoked, they treat you differently because they know you cannot be swayed by emotional tactics. In a world where so many people are quick to react, quick to argue, and quick to lose composure, the one who controls their emotions sets themselves apart as unshakable, and that is where true power lies. Ignoring back is often more powerful than any reaction you could give because it flips the dynamic entirely. When someone ignores you, their goal is often to provoke a response, to make you feel less, to force you into chasing their attention. The moment you respond with anger, defensiveness, or desperation, you confirm their control. But when you mirror their behavior and choose to ignore them in return, you deny them the satisfaction of control. You send a clear, unspoken message. Their attempt to diminish you has no effect. That silence is unsettling to them because it shows they are not as important to you as they believed themselves to be. Ignoring back is not about being petty or playing games. It is about discipline. It is choosing not to invest your energy in someone who has already shown they do not value it. Energy is one of the most valuable resources you have, and giving it to someone who ignores you is the same as pouring water into a broken glass. It will never be enough, and you will always end up depleted. By ignoring back, you redirect that energy inward to the people and pursuits that actually matter. You reclaim your focus, your peace, and your sense of self-worth. When you ignore back, you also introduce uncertainty. The person who ignored you expects a predictable outcome. They assume you will chase, that you will seek closure, that you will try to win them over. When you do not, when you remain silent, they are forced into a position they did not prepare for. They may wonder why you haven't reacted, why you seem unaffected, why you can walk away without hesitation. That uncertainty often unsettles them far more than any words you could have spoken, because it denies them control over your behavior. Ignoring back also forces people to confront themselves. Silence acts like a mirror. When you do not respond, they are left alone with their actions. Sometimes, being ignored back makes them realize that their behavior has consequences, that you are not someone who will tolerate disrespect or indifference. In many cases, that realization prompts them to reconsider how they treat you. But even if it doesn't, you've still maintained your dignity by not stooping to their level. You've proven to yourself that you don't need to react in order to protect your self-worth. It's important to note that ignoring back requires strength because it goes against instinct. Your emotions will push you to seek acknowledgement, to demand answers, to prove your value, but every time you resist that impulse, you reinforce your own power. You are training yourself to rely less on external validation and more on your own internal stability. And that self-reliance is one of the most liberating forms of strength you can cultivate. Ignoring back also creates space for you to move forward. If you are constantly tied up in the cycle of seeking recognition from someone who withholds it, you are stuck in their orbit. But the moment you stop responding, you free yourself from that cycle. You open the door to relationships and opportunities where your presence is valued, where your voice matters. In essence, ignoring back is not about punishing the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the grip they have on your emotions. At its core, ignoring back is not silence for the sake of silence. It is silence with intention. It is a choice that communicates strength, boundaries, and self-respect. It shifts the balance of power by refusing to participate in the dynamic the other person tried to create. And that choice, while quiet on the surface, echoes louder than any argument or explanation ever could. Silence creates space for respect because it forces both you and others to pause. When you resist the urge to fill every gap with words, reactions, or explanations, you create a powerful vacuum. In that quiet, people are left to process their own actions, their own treatment of you, and their own assumptions about who you are. Silence is not absence. It is presence. It is a deliberate choice that tells others you value your energy enough not to waste it. And that choice often demands more respect than any heated argument could ever achieve. When someone ignores you, your natural instinct may be to prove yourself, to speak louder, to demand recognition. But when you stay silent, you send a different message. You are showing that you do not need to fight for acknowledgement. You are confident enough to let your actions, your presence, and your discipline speak for you. That restraint is rare, and people respect what they cannot easily provoke. By refusing to react, you establish a boundary that says, I cannot be pulled into games, I will not dance for attention. My value stands whether you recognize it or not. Silence also gives people the opportunity to reflect. When you do not respond to someone ignoring you, they are left without closure. Instead of moving forward comfortably, they are forced to sit with their own behavior. They may start to question whether they treated you fairly, whether they underestimated you, whether their actions damaged something of value. That questioning is where respect begins. Because once people realize that they cannot control you with dismissal, they begin to see you differently, not as someone desperate for validation, but as someone who stands firm on their own ground. Respect is not demanded with words, it is earned through behavior. Silence becomes a form of behavior that communicates self-control, composure, and confidence. Anyone can raise their voice, anyone can argue. But very few people can sit in silence and let others wrestle with the weight of their actions. That ability makes you stand out because it shows discipline, and discipline is always respected, even by those who may not like you. Silence also deepens the respect you hold for yourself. When you do not chase, when you do not beg, when you do not engage in proving your worth, you affirm your own dignity. You remind yourself that your voice is not something to be thrown at anyone who dismisses it. That internal respect is critical because it sets the standard for how others treat you. If you respect yourself enough to stay silent when ignored, you teach others that your attention and energy are valuable, and they must rise to meet that standard. Another powerful aspect of silence is that it creates anticipation. People expect a reaction, and when they don't get it, the quiet lingers. That anticipation often leads others to give you more respect because they realize you are not predictable. You are not controlled by emotion. You are not easy to push around. They come to understand that engaging with you requires effort, thought, and respect because you will not entertain anything less. Silence is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is the deliberate creation of space where respect can grow. In that space, others are left to confront themselves, and you are left with your dignity intact. Respect thrives where discipline is present, and silence is one of the strongest forms of discipline you can practice. It is not the absence of a voice. It is the presence of self-respect so strong that you do not need to shout to be heard.